Remember, remember the days in September, the people the world had forgot. I see of no reason why the Bell Riot treason should ever be forgot. When the Bell Riots erupted, people of that time, in the distant future of 2024, wondered how this could happen. And really, who was to blame? Do you blame the rioters? After all, they are the ones causing the mass destruction. They are setting buildings on fire, using weapons, and hurting others. They are causing the strife directly. Though, can we seriously condemn them? After all, they are responding to years of malfeasance by a police force that does have some officers who use their authority to oppress them. While most of the officers are quite good people, there are others within the force that are overzealous and abusive. Their actions would result in people getting hurt or being killed. Maybe it's the fault of the government. They are underfunding, undertraining, and overworking the police force after all. The government's bottom line is as important as any company's, and they'll cut costs where they can. With those being oppressed, seemingly accepting the fate that they've been given, why put more money into the problem? No reason to change policy, really. And then there's the public. The public that cares. Probably. They don't want people to get hurt, but because of the media and everything else going on, they simply have forgotten and feel powerless to do anything at an individual level when they see such pain. The media is constantly telling them about other ills of the day, and the citizens at large feel like they've already addressed the issues that the oppressed are talking about. Or they'll just blame it on a specific region in their country and pretend like they were never basically on the same page, and in fact are more racist now than that region is, but that's a story for another time. To the citizens not oppressed, there's not really a problem, so why worry about it? Why hold the government to account? Everything is being taken care of, right? The fact is, the riots of 2024 was the result of the mentally ill, criminals, and mainly those down on their luck being forgotten and treated inhumanely. When you look at the genesis of the sanctuary districts, it's quite interesting. Homelessness and mental illness had been on the rise. People wanted to do something to take care of the problem and help out as much as they could. Thus, the creation of the sanctuary districts. Placed in every major city, sanctuary districts would house the mentally ill and those who couldn't afford to feed themselves. It would provide them with food and shelter. A section of the city would be cordoned off and a giant wall built around it. People would be taken into a processing center, their status determined, and then allowed into the mini city. Anyone with a criminal record wouldn't be allowed in. Of course, while this seems to have some good sides to it, it would basically other those who went into the system. They would be classified as either gimmies, those down on their luck as I've discussed, dims, a name for the mentally ill, and a new class would slowly rise within the walls themselves. It would be that of the ghosts. The criminal element that thrived given the lack of police presence, well, generally, in a response to the brutality of the police when they did bother to show up. Most of the earth didn't have to worry about this, of course. After all, everyone knows that strong fences make for good neighbors. Another interesting impact we see is that on the outside of the districts. Everyone needed to conform more and more. They had to look like everyone else if they wanted to be a part of the economic elite and even be able to get contracts from the government. However, the need to start looking like everyone else would ultimately also lead to those beginning to think like everyone else as well. However, when you begin trying to look like everyone else, you try to impress the government, you begin to trust it a lot more than you should. This would lead to police forces walking around, outside of the sanctuary district no less, with shotguns and everyone being required to have identification on them at all times. No identification and no one to vouch for you means that you would go into the sanctuary district. Don't want to be identified? Well, good luck with the ghosts. While we don't know exactly what the infrastructure is in the sanctuary district itself, we do know that there was bad hygiene, there was little to no medicine, and the district generally had to rely on only one doctor for an entire populace of 10,000 people. It's telling that when someone is attacked, they don't go to the police. What was the point after all? Nothing would be done. One of the saddest things about the districts, for me at least, is the amount of children that you see within them. If you haven't watched in a while, go back and look. That aside, getting back into it, what do you think happens when you constantly, for years or decades, other people and continue to systematically oppress them? Eventually, they will rise up. The Bell Riots would ultimately start with an altercation between one citizen of a sanctuary district and a guard. The conflict would escalate with other sanctuary residents grabbing the weapons of the police and taking hostages, including guards and workers at a processing center. The riot spread quickly across the sanctuary district, with people beginning to burn buildings, loot what they could, and attacking any authority figures, both innocent and guilty, police and otherwise, beating them to a bloody pulp. And again, it didn't just stop with them. As I stated, it's inferred that anyone that represented the government would be required to give their pound of flesh. At the moment, the entirety of the district and a little piece of San Francisco was on fire. You have honest people who are trying to make a life for themselves, who originally wanted it to be a peaceful protest but are working with the hand they're dealt. And you have the bad actors, those who don't like the situation but ultimately are just trying to get what they want. Little do they know, it's going to be raining in Tasmania at the time, though. We don't see a lot on the topic, and it's sadly not explored all that well, but the response of the rest of the citizenry is intriguing. We see even the media guy look at what's happening and saying, well, they aren't criminals, but they are acting like them right now. There's a general confusion as to why there would be riots and condemnation of the actions taken. Again, we can't observe every aspect, but it strikes me that some would be convinced that the riots are worth it, and others would not think that this is the way to effect change, that you don't destroy your own home for a better life. The world's response to the riots would confuse those who were in the sanctuary districts or had been a part of the districts themselves. How did the people who didn't have to endure it not see what was happening? That some would think that the rioters, most of them, just want to cause destruction because they wanted to watch the world burn, when most of the rioters, most of the people there, didn't. Certainly, some enjoyed stealing and destruction, but a lot of it was an attempt to rebuild the world from the ground up, or at least to be seen. However, things would only be allowed to progress for so long. The government, even a democratically elected one, isn't generally known for its patience with rioters and instigators. To be fair, individually, those within the government would want to help. The negotiator would try to work with the rioters and effect change. Though it's ironic, she says she'll have trouble feeding 10,000 people when the entire point of the sanctuary was to do just that. But either way, when you break it down, individuals, after all, are lovely. It's the groups you have to worry about. The governor ultimately decides that enough was enough and the military would be activated to pacify the populace. The National Guard is sent in. Multiple units surround the sanctuary district. Early in the morning, soldiers bomb several areas and move in, neutralizing the threat in various areas. They would shoot to kill, easily overpowering the undermanned and underarmed rioters. They swiftly move through the district, leaving a trail of hurt people and dead bodies. Most of those who are hurt or dead didn't have anything to do with the riots either. Just the wrong place, the wrong time. If you've gotten this far in the video and not done a hate comment, congratulations. If you disagree or something I've said has raised your ire, I promise someone is pissed off right now about the exact opposite of what you agreed with. While a large part of this channel is escapism and presenting documentaries of fictional universes from the perspective of just a guy on a computer and who has a sexy voice, sometimes it's necessary for us to take a deeper look at the art, to take lessons that we can get from the fiction. The Bell Riots showed us that no one is without sin. The question is, what do we do with that lesson?